The sound of champagne glasses clinking echoed through the lavish wedding reception hall, but all I could hear was my father's voice, a familiar, dismissive tone that had haunted me my entire life. "She's just a security guard," he said to a group of our extended family, his words dripping with condescension. I stood near the edge of the dance floor, my crisp black security uniform a stark contrast to the sea of elegant wedding attire. My younger brother Marco's wedding was supposed to be a celebration, yet here I was, once again reduced to a punchline in my family's narrative. Growing up in the Rodriguez household had always been a delicate balance of expectations and disappointments. My father, Miguel Rodriguez, was a man who measured success by traditional metrics: college degrees, corporate jobs, financial status. I had chosen a different path. After high school, while my siblings pursued university educations, I enrolled in a security training program, finding purpose in protecting others. My sister Elena, yes, we share the same name, became a lawyer. Marco, the golden child, was now a successful investment banker. And me? I was the black sheep, the daughter who chose a profession my father considered beneath our family's potential. "Security guard," he would say, his voice laden with disappointment. "You could have been so much more." Those words became a constant soundtrack to my life, a recurring reminder of my perceived shortcomings. The wedding was just another stage for my father's performance. Relatives leaned in, listening to his narrative. "Elena always took the easy route," he continued, unaware or uncaring that I could hear every word. "She didn't want to challenge herself like the rest of us." What they didn't understand was the complexity of my work. Being a security guard wasn't just about standing at a door or monitoring cameras. It required keen observation, quick decision-making, and an understanding of human behavior that went far beyond the superficial judgments of my family. I had worked my way up from entry-level positions to become a senior security consultant for a prestigious firm. I specialized in corporate security strategies, conducting risk assessments for major companies. But to my father, these achievements were invisible, overshadowed by his narrow definition of success. The wedding guests nodded sympathetically as my father spoke, their expressions a mixture of pity and agreement. I felt the familiar burn of humiliation, a feeling I had grown accustomed to over the years. Each gathering, each family event became an arena where my worth was consistently questioned and diminished. Marco caught my eye from across the room. For a moment, I saw a flicker of something, maybe guilt, maybe recognition, but he quickly looked away, returning to his conversation with a group of his banker friends. As the night progressed, I watched my family celebrate, feeling like a ghost among them. A security guard. Just a security guard. The words echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of the chasm between my reality and their expectations. Little did they know, this moment, this seemingly ordinary wedding reception, would become the catalyst for everything that was about to change. My father had no idea what was coming, no understanding of the strategic mind he had consistently underestimated. The game was about to change, and I would be the one to change it. The next morning, nursing a cup of coffee in my small apartment, I began to connect the dots. Years of subtle manipulations crystallized into a stark, painful clarity. My father's betrayal ran deeper than casual dismissal. It was a calculated campaign to undermine my entire professional existence. I pulled out an old shoebox where I'd been collecting curious documents, fragments of emails, intercepted correspondence, odd notes that never quite made sense before. Now, they formed a damning mosaic of deliberate sabotage. The first email was from 2 years ago, a recommendation request I'd never known about. My father had intercepted it, responding personally to a potential employer. "Elena is unreliable," the email read. "She lacks professional commitment." The letterhead showed it was from a major security consulting firm I'd been desperate to join. Another document revealed a series of whispered conversations. My father had been systematically reaching out to professional contacts in the security industry, planting seeds of doubt about my capabilities. "She's not serious about her career," he would say, "just a temporary phase." I remembered the job interviews that never materialized, the opportunities that seemed to evaporate mysteriously. What I had attributed to bad luck was actually a carefully orchestrated campaign of professional destruction. The most painful revelation came from a voicemail I discovered. My father had called Marco, discussing my career as if I were a disappointment to be managed. "We need to guide her to something more respectable," he had said. "Security work is beneath our family." Each piece of evidence cut deeper than the last. This wasn't just dismissal. It was a calculated effort to control my life, to force me into the mold he had predetermined. My entire professional journey had been under silent attack, with me completely unaware. The psychological impact was devastating. Years of self-doubt, of feeling like I was never quite good enough, suddenly made sense. My father hadn't just been dismissive, he had been systematically destroying my professional reputation. Something shifted inside me. The hurt transformed, crystallizing into a cold, calculated determination. This was no longer about proving myself to my family. This was about exposing the truth. I began to map out every connection, every conversation, every potential avenue of exposure. My security background had taught me the art of gathering intelligence, of building comprehensive profiles. Now, I would turn those skills toward a singular purpose. My father had made a critical mistake. He had underestimated me my entire life, and now I was going to make him understand the true meaning of a strategic takedown. The Elena Rodriguez he thought he knew was about to disappear. A new version was emerging, precise, calculated, and absolutely unforgiving. My transformation began in the quiet corners of my professional world. As a security consultant, I had developed a network of contacts that extended far beyond my father's imagination. Each connection would become a strategic asset in my carefully orchestrated plan. I started by reaching out to Maria Rodriguez, a forensic accountant I'd worked with on a corporate investigation. We had developed a mutual respect during a complex financial fraud case, and I knew she possessed the skills I would need. "I need to build a comprehensive case," I told her during a discreet meeting in a downtown coffee shop. "But it can't just be personal. It needs to be professional, irrefutable." Maria understood immediately. My father worked as a mid-level executive at a regional manufacturing company. His position gave him a veneer of respectability, but I knew there were cracks in that facade waiting to be exposed. My security background taught me the art of gathering intelligence. I began collecting documentation, financial records, communication logs, professional correspondence. Each piece was carefully verified, cross-referenced, and documented. I discovered my father had been involved in more than just family manipulation. There were inconsistencies in his company's financial reporting. Small discrepancies that might seem insignificant to an untrained eye, but to someone with my investigative skills, they were glaring red flags. My network expanded. I reached out to former colleagues, leveraging my reputation as a thorough and ethical security professional. Each conversation was carefully planned, each connection strategically cultivated. Jack Reynolds, an investigative journalist I had previously assisted with a corporate security breach, became an unexpected ally. "This needs to be more than just a family dispute," he advised. "You need a narrative that exposes systemic issues." I developed a multi-layered approach. The revenge would not be a simple exposure, but a calculated dismantling of my father's professional and personal reputation. I wanted him to understand the full weight of systematic manipulation. My security expertise became my greatest weapon. I began documenting everything, creating a paper trail that would be impossible to refute. Financial irregularities, professional misconduct, patterns of manipulation that extended beyond our family. Late nights turned into strategic planning sessions. I mapped out potential scenarios, anticipated countermoves, prepared for every possible reaction. This was more than revenge. This was a professional takedown of surgical precision. The most critical component was timing. I needed to ensure maximum exposure, minimum escape routes. My father had spent years constructing a narrative about me. Now I would deconstruct everything he believed about power, control, and success. My mother, sensing something was different, tried to intervene. "Let it go, Elena," she would say. But I was beyond letting go. I was preparing to expose a truth that had been buried for far too long. The pieces were falling into place. My father's world was about to come crashing down, and I would be the architect of his destruction. The moment of execution arrived on a crisp Tuesday morning. I had carefully orchestrated every detail, ensuring maximum impact and minimal room for escape. Jack Reynolds sat across from me in a secure conference room, his investigative journalist's notebook open. "Walk me through everything," he said, his eyes sharp with professional intensity. I spread out the documentation, meticulously collected evidence of my father's corporate malfeasance. Financial irregularities at North Star Manufacturing went beyond simple accounting errors. They were systematic fraud, carefully concealed beneath layers of complex financial reporting. "This isn't just about family," I explained. "This is about exposing a pattern of corporate corruption that extends far beyond my personal vendetta." The first domino fell when Jack's preliminary investigation hit the national news. A breaking story about financial misconduct at a mid-sized manufacturing company sent shockwaves through the business community. My father's name was strategically woven into the narrative, not as the primary target, but as a key figure in a much larger investigation. Within hours, my phone began to ring. Colleagues, family members, old contacts, all wanting to understand the story behind the headlines. I remained calculated, providing just enough information to fuel the fire without revealing my personal motivation. The corporate world moved quickly. North Star Manufacturing's board of directors called an emergency meeting. Internal investigations were launched. My father, once a respected mid-level executive, found himself at the center of a growing storm. My sister Elena called, her voice a mixture of confusion and anger. "What are you doing?" she demanded. I remained calm, knowing that each reaction was part of the carefully planned strategy. The local news picked up the story. Then, national networks. Suddenly, the man who had spent years dismissing me as just a security guard was being scrutinized by every major business publication. I watched the coverage with a sense of detached precision. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice, about exposing the systemic manipulation that had defined my entire professional existence. My father's attempts to control the narrative crumbled. Colleagues who had once protected him now distanced themselves. The professional network he had so carefully cultivated began to disintegrate. The most dramatic moment came during a live news broadcast. Footage of corporate investigators entering North Star Manufacturing's headquarters played alongside interviews with whistleblowers, sources I had carefully cultivated over months of strategic planning. Marco reached out, his voice trembling. "Dad's losing everything," he said. But I heard something else in his voice, a dawning understanding of the truth I had known all along. My mother called, desperate. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. I remained calm, knowing that the truth was more important than family loyalty built on lies. As the day progressed, the story grew. What had started as a personal mission became a national conversation about corporate accountability. My father's name became synonymous with corporate misconduct. The security guard he had always dismissed had just brought an entire corporate structure to its knees. And this was only the beginning. The fallout was swift and devastating. My father's carefully constructed world collapsed like a house of cards, each revelation more damaging than the last. Federal investigators descended on North Star Manufacturing. The company's stock plummeted. Shareholders demanded explanations. Board members resigned. And at the center of it all was my father, the man who had spent years dismissing me as just a security guard. I watched from a secure location, monitoring every development with calculated precision. This was more than revenge. This was justice. A systematic dismantling of everything he believed defined success. The first congressional hearing was televised nationally. My father sat pale and trembling, his once confident demeanor completely shattered. Investigators presented evidence of financial fraud, corporate misconduct, and systemic corruption that went far beyond what even I had initially uncovered. Mr. Rodriguez, the lead investigator began, can you explain these discrepancies? Each question was a surgical strike, exposing the lies he had built his entire career upon. My mother called, her voice breaking. What have you done? But there was an undercurrent of something else, a mixture of fear and, perhaps, a long-suppressed understanding of the truth. Marco tried to intervene, attempting to mitigate the damage. But the wheels of justice had been set in motion, and there was no stopping them now. The most powerful moment came during a national news broadcast. They ran a profile piece that transformed the narrative completely. No longer was I just a security guard. I was the whistleblower, the professional who had uncovered a massive corporate conspiracy. Interviews with my professional contacts painted a different picture of me. Respected colleagues spoke about my investigative skills, my integrity, my professional excellence. The same family members who had once dismissed me now watched in stunned silence. Jack Reynolds, the investigative journalist, became a crucial ally. Elena Rodriguez is not just a security guard, he told national news outlets. She's a professional who has exposed a significant corporate fraud. My professional network rallied around me. Job offers started pouring in. Speaking engagements, consulting opportunities. The very world my father had tried to keep me out of now embraced me completely. The legal proceedings dragged on, but the damage was done. My father faced multiple charges: financial fraud, corporate misconduct, systematic corruption. His reputation was irreparably destroyed. During a family dinner, the first since everything began, the dynamic had completely shifted. My siblings looked at me differently. My mother's eyes held a mixture of fear and newfound respect. How did you do this? Marco asked, his voice a mixture of awe and terror. I simply smiled. I used the skills you all said weren't good enough, I responded. The most profound moment came when my father, stripped of his professional position, approached me. Gone was the dismissive man who had spent years undermining me. In his place was a broken individual who finally understood the power of the daughter he had consistently underestimated. I never saw you, he said, his voice barely a whisper. No, I responded. You never wanted to. Justice, I realized, was not about destruction. It was about revelation, about bringing truth to light. And in that moment, I was completely free. The world looks different when you've dismantled everything that once defined you. In the months following the investigation, my life transformed completely. The security consultant who was once dismissed became a sought-after expert in corporate accountability and ethical investigations. Speaking engagements, consulting contracts, media appearances, opportunities I had been denied were now abundant. My family dynamics shifted irrevocably. My mother reached out, tentatively at first. I never understood your strength, she confessed during one of our first conversations after everything happened. The walls of silence and judgment were crumbling. Marco became an unexpected ally. The brother who had once stood silently while our father dismissed me now sought to understand. How did you do it? he asked, genuine respect replacing his previous condescension. My sister Elena, the lawyer who had once looked down on my profession, now sought my advice on corporate investigations. The irony was not lost on me, but the most profound change was internal. I realized revenge was never about destroying my father. It was about destroying the narrative that had defined me, about proving that success is not a predetermined path, but a journey of integrity, skill, and determination. The national recognition brought unexpected opportunities. I was invited to speak at security conferences, universities, corporate events. My story became more than a personal vendetta. It became a testament to professional resilience. My father, stripped of his professional standing, became a shadow of his former self. The man who had spent years defining my worth now understood the true meaning of professional consequence. I didn't feel triumph. I felt liberation. The security uniform I once wore, the one he had mocked, became a symbol of something greater. Not just a job, but a calling, a profession built on protecting others, on uncovering truth, on maintaining integrity. Therapy helped me process the complex emotions. I learned that revenge is not about destruction, but about reclaiming your narrative, about proving your worth not through others' expectations, but through your own actions. My professional network expanded. Colleagues who had witnessed my journey reached out, sharing their own stories of professional resilience. I became more than just a security consultant. I became a voice for those who had been systematically underestimated. The little girl who was once told she was just anything had become something extraordinary. As I looked to the future, I understood that my greatest revenge was not the exposure of my father's misconduct. It was my continued success, my unwavering commitment to my profession, my absolute refusal to be defined by anyone's expectations but my own. I was no longer just a security guard. I was Elena Rodriguez, and I was unstoppable.